Our dinner guests spent the whole evening insulting me in a language they thought I didn't know. They had no idea I used to be famous in their home country. My daughter brought her boyfriend home to meet me last Christmas. He seemed charming enough on the phone. Then his parents walked in and started speaking Russian to each other, assuming I couldn't understand a word. The first thing the dad said was, "Look at that dusty piano. Probably can't even play a note, just for decoration so they can pretend they have culture." The mom laughed and said, "These Americans. They buy pianos like they buy art, just to look sophisticated. I bet no one in this house has touched it in years." I smiled and offered to take their coats. They walked into my living room and the comments kept coming. The mom looked around and said, "So small. Our son deserves better than this." I thought she said her mother had money. The dad said, "Maybe she lied to impress him. Look at the furniture. This is not the home of a successful person." I brought out the food I'd spent all day preparing. Roasted chicken, homemade pierogies, a recipe I learned from my grandmother. The mom took one bite and said to her husband, "Bland, no flavor. I wouldn't serve this to guests." She probably got it from a box. I kept smiling and asked if anyone wanted more wine. They looked at me while I poured, and the mom said, "Look at her clothes. That dress is at least 10 years old. Does she even have a job, or does she just sit around this little house all day?" My daughter was beaming across the table, completely oblivious, just happy that everyone seemed to be getting along. She had been so nervous about this dinner. She really liked this boy. She squeezed my hand at one point and whispered, "Thank you so much for doing this, Mom." The boyfriend's dad swirled his wine and said, "Our son could have any woman he wanted. Why this one? She's plain at best. Nothing special about her." The mom nodded and said, "He'll get bored eventually. He always does. At least she's a nice distraction for now." My daughter is not plain. She graduated with honors from Columbia. She runs the charitable foundation at her father's company. She volunteers at a shelter every weekend. She is one of the kindest and most accomplished people I have ever known. And these people were sitting at my table, eating my food and calling her a distraction. My daughter offered to show her boyfriend the rest of the house. They stepped into the hallway to look at old family photos. The moment they were out of earshot, the boyfriend leaned back toward his mother and whispered in Russian, "Don't worry. I'm just with her until I make partner at her father's firm. Once I'm set up, I'm done with her." His mother smiled and patted his hand. She said, "Smart boy. Use what you can. That's how you get ahead in this country." I set down the wine bottle very slowly. I had heard enough. I stood up from the table and walked over to the piano. The dad smirked at his wife and said, "Oh, look, she's going to attempt to play. This should be embarrassing." I sat down on the bench and rolled my shoulders. I placed my fingers on the keys and I played. I played Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto No. 3, the piece that made me famous, the piece I performed when I was 22 years old in front of 3,000 people who gave me a standing ovation that lasted 4 minutes. The room went completely silent. When I finished, I turned around on the bench and looked directly at them. I said in perfect Russian, "I trained at the Moscow Conservatory in 1986. I have performed at Carnegie Hall 11 times. That dusty thing was a gift from Mstislav Rostropovich himself after I played for him in Vienna." Their faces went white. The dad's mouth hung open. The mom looked like she was going to be sick. I continued in Russian. "My daughter is not plain. She is brilliant and kind and accomplished. Your son would be lucky to spend another minute in her presence." I looked at the boyfriend. I said, "But he won't get that chance." I understood every word about making partner. My daughter had come back into the room. She was standing in the doorway looking confused. She said, "Mom, what's going on? What did you say to them?" I told her everything. I translated every insult about our home, our food, my clothes. I translated what they said about her being plain and boring and a distraction. And I translated what her boyfriend whispered to his mother about using her to make partner and then leaving. My daughter's face changed. She looked at her boyfriend and said, "Get out of my mother's house." He tried to explain. He said, "Baby, she's twisting my words. That's not what I meant." My daughter pointed at the door. She said, "I understood enough. Get out, all of you." They scrambled to grab their coats. The mom tried to apologize, but my daughter just stood there with her arms crossed until they were gone. They tried to explain themselves in the driveway, but my daughter slammed the door in their faces.